That's why I say that automating labor is so profound for businesses. This is a massive game changer. I'm not suggesting Walmart's earnings go up by a factor of 2. Along the way, they're passing on cost savings to customers. This is how everybody benefits from this. Compound that with the decline in transportation costs, logistics costs. Compound that with the decline ultimately of energy costs, and you get massive deflation going through the economy. It's transportation costs, because robotaxi, robotrucking, AI, whether it's embodied in a robot form, an Optimus form, or unembodied just in a computer, it will have a dramatic deflationary effect on labor costs. But the good news, again, that's going to be offset by cost of living for people, so it won't cost as much to live. So here's a quick look at Target.
If you could buy something that saves you $615,000 over 10 years, what would you pay for it today? That's the question every major employer on Earth is about to face, because once one company deploys humanoid robots, everyone else will be forced to follow or risk getting wiped out by lower labor costs. And here's the truth, CEOs should be calling Elon Musk right now to get in line for Tesla's Optimus. If they're not first, they could be waiting years, while competitors deployed robots and massively undercut them. So what happens if UPS beats FedEx? If Walmart beats Amazon and Target? If CVS beats Walgreens? If Ford beats GM? Today we'll show you estimates of additional net income companies like Walmart, Kroger, Amazon, UPS, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Chipotle could generate with humanoid bots, and why every executive should treat humanoid robots as a call option on the survival of their business. Cern Basher is a chartered financial analyst running his own investment advisory firm called Brilliant Advice, providing wealth management services. Welcome, Cern.
Hi, Herbert. Yeah, the age of embodied humanoid robots, AI-powered humanoid robots is upon us. This is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, you actually did this work, I think you said about a year or so ago, but that was so early. And so now it's no longer a dream. We are here. And again, as always, thank you for putting in all the work you do because you're putting numbers onto actual businesses of what they would get and whether or not, that's the question, right? Could humanoid robots actually make one company so much, have such a competitive advantage that could really take over a market? Or is it just, yeah, it's nice to have a little bit of extra margin or not? You'll explain that today, right?
Yeah, we're going to go over some fairly rough numbers on that today, but I think it'll be very clear how impactful this is going to be.
So you call it a call option of business survival. I think you just call it business survival.
Yeah, I call it a call option because if companies don't get in line per se, then they may be left out. And so the call option basically is, hey, reach out to Tesla, reach out to Elon, whatever means you have, if you're a CEO of a major company, and make sure that you're on the list to receive an allocation of Tesla Optimus robots as soon as possible.
I hope executives of major corporations of any company should be watching today because you will outline how much humanoid robots could actually impact a company. That's great.
Yeah,
Great
including
photo.
Tesla. So one of the things here, these are some posts from a couple of years ago, I think now. I did some work on how much companies could save by deploying Optimus or humanoid robots in general. And depending on the your assumptions that go in there in terms of the hourly rate that the companies pay, the midpoint of this analysis was like $15 an hour pay. In that case, you could save up to $615,000 over a 10-year period.
Mm-hmm.
And the question with that is then how much is that worth to a company to pay a humanoid robot if it saves you $615,000? What is that worth to you? And for this analysis, I just kept it really simple and said, well, Tesla gets half of that savings, right? 300 and some thousand, and the company gets to keep half, right? So they should be willing to pay Tesla about $307,000 for a robot that could save them that kind of money over a 10-year period. Now, of course, my model's evolved since then. I now believe that for the most part, Optimus will be robots as a service. But Elon did confirm last summer that they would do both. They would sell them, and it would be robots as a service. So I think we're looking at both scenarios. And then, of course, the conclusion with that, as we just mentioned, is that if companies don't do this, and we'll see why exactly here in a second, if companies don't do this, the very survival of their business is at stake. This is such a fundamental change in the labor situation. If your main competitor adopts a lower cost form of labor, right? And we can look at over the last few decades how everybody shipped labor to Southeast Asia. And the companies that didn't do that really struggled. This is that times 10,
Mm.
right? That's the consequence of not adopting robotic labor at some point. Now, of course, we're not quite there yet in terms of where the robots are, but that's coming at us very fast. And so my
And
point is if companies don't secure access to that, they could be left out in the cold. And by the time they get robots, it could be too late.
it's also true, right, that because it's supply constrained, not every human or robot vendor is able to produce, tens of millions yet. If one company got a hold of 10,000 human robots and then the other company goes, oh, hey, I want to do it too. And then they call in, but it's like a month later. These companies are booked. They're done.
Yeah.
And now you are in line for 3-4 years from now in order to get your 10,000 robots. That could be the case, right?
Yeah, it's a bit like going to a concert, right? And everybody wants to go to the concert and all the tickets are sold out and you want in. Well,
Mhm.
you're going to have to pay through the nose to get a ticket if you can get one. If anybody's willing to sell you a ticket. If those tickets are even transferable, right? To use an analogy, right? This is going to be potentially the issue with humanoid robots is that a million robot manufacturing line sounds like a big number. It's not. It's a drop in the bucket. It's a tiny, tiny amount.
All right. And now, before we get to the actual companies and the impact of them, you want to just walk us through just the baseline of how much a human or robot does, how can it actually impact a company in the first place, right?
Yeah. So here's how I think about it. Let's start with human labor and just understand a couple of things, and we'll kind of work into this. So this is like a diagram that shows at the bottom hourly wage rates from $5 an hour up to 40. Now we know that there's other costs for employers, and just using some rough numbers, a $15 an hour wage rate actually might cost the company more like $22 an hour,
Hmm.
right? With benefits and taxes and different things they have to pay. And maybe even higher than this, depending on what country, state, city that you're actually manufacturing in. But just to give some rough idea, so when I'm talking about $15 an hour wage, it actually costs the company quite a bit more than that, right? And at $40 an hour wage, for maybe somebody in a Tesla factory actually earning more than that, you're looking at, 55 to $60 an hour effectively for that pay. So I just kind of wanted to show a range here. And one of the things that I did on the next page, Herbert, when I looked at the cost of humanoid robots and Optimus, one interesting thing I discovered was, let's say we focus just on that $15 an hour wage rate. While it costs companies to employ humans at 22, the robot might be something like 750. So you can see right there that there's a dramatic difference in the hourly wage cost. Now, we won't spend time on this show and going into the details on that. We've done that in previous shows. But the interesting thing is, if you look on the next page, the difference between those two previous lines are these numbers. And that for that $15 an hour wage rate, the savings per hour is almost $15.
What? Yeah, yeah,
So as a rule of thumb, if you're paying an
yeah.
employee $15 an hour, you might be able to save $15 an hour by going to robotic labor.
Oh my God.
Right? Again, rough numbers depending on your assumptions for all kinds of different things, but I think this is in the ballpark.
Wow.
If you're paying somebody $40 an hour, you might be able to save $40 an hour. So this is why I think that this is an absolutely profound thing for the global labor market,
Makes sense. My gosh,
right?
I like the way you put this. Yeah, because like you keep saying that this is all in is like benefits and taxes and of course the workers' comp, retirement. Just add all that up and then just space, I guess, also. But anyways, yeah, this is a nice way to think of it. It's easy way to think of it. I like it.
It's a rough rule of thumb. Now, I would say I'd be the first to say this is not going to be the case early
Right.
on. The robots are going to be
Yeah.
very expensive,
Yes.
right? And they'll go to the companies that have the highest demand and the most urgency to employ robotic labor. But this is some sort of steady state at some point in the future, not too distant future. And then eventually, once the world is, there's billions of robots, these numbers will be very different. It'll be even
Hmm.
cheaper. So then on the next page, we calculate what the lifetime bot savings is. And that, again, that middle one, the $15 an hour, works out to about $615,000 a year of savings over 10 years. Sorry, not 615,000 over 10 years, not per year, but over 10
That's
years
per employee though, right? That's per
per
bot.
per
Yeah.
employee, yeah. And you can see at different wage rates what those numbers are. So even if you were paying, in a lower wage country $5 an hour, you're still saving $205,000 over a 10-year period. And if you're paying somebody $40 an hour in a factory, you're saving like 1.6 million. Okay. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, let's assume that Tesla gets to keep half of that, right? They're splitting the savings with the customer. In that case, that bot could be worth $820,000 today to a company willing to do that. Again, I'm not suggesting that Tesla's going to sell bots for that price, but just as an indication of what these things could be worth. Okay. And again, the assumption here is that bots can do the work at the same pace that a human can, and is just as capable as a human. That's not yet where we are today. We will get there probably in the not too distant future, and then we'll go beyond that. A bot will be more capable than a human and probably be able to work faster than a human. Not to mention work 3 shifts.
Right. I was going to ask that question next. So right now you were comparing it to an employee, but employees only work 8-hour shifts. How does that translate?
The numbers here, I assume the bot's working 20 hours a day for these numbers.
Okay.
So effectively, you're replacing potentially three shifts with these numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. So this just sets the scene here in terms of what we're looking at as far as sort of economics on a per bot basis. Let's now turn our attention to what that means, or what that might mean for a company like Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
This is a nice chart that shows Tesla's business model from the income statement perspective. So if we work our way from the left, they sell cars. Last quarter, about 20.5 billion worth. There's regulatory credits, there's leasing, there's the energy business, and then the services and other business. Those all contribute to revenue that's about 28 billion in the third quarter. Then out of that revenue, they have costs, right? Cost of revenue about 23 billion. Right, that's a drain that goes off to the right there. And then gross profit of about 5 billion, about 18% gross profit margin. Now, Tesla's labor costs are both in that cost of revenue, and they're also in that the operating expenses, right? So they sort of sit in both places. So for Tesla, it might be easier to look at an example of a factory, right, rather than the whole company. So what I'm like to present here is a bit of a methodology for other companies, if they're looking at robotic labor, that they could sort of employ. And again, this is a very simple version of this, but hopefully people will get an idea of how to do this. If we go to the next slide, Herbert. In this slide, we are looking at 3 different scenarios, and this is for Optimus in a Tesla factory. Now, I'm looking at wage rates here of $20, $30, and $40 an hour. I think actually these are low. It probably should be 40, 50, and 60.
Yeah.
So right there, we may be off base, but let's say we're just being conservative. Okay, so the annual labor cost per person, that 4th line down, is about $58,000 to $115,000 a year. And for a factory that has 20,000 employees in it, like Giga Texas, you're looking at labor costs of 1.1 billion to 2.3 billion, maybe even more if you use higher labor rates. Let's now, for argument's sake, say that you could replace half of those workers with people. So you're replacing 10,000 workers, and because one bot can work 3 shifts, you don't need 10,000 bots, you need 3,333. Then the annual labor savings is about $500 million to $1 billion.
Wow. Yeah.
One factory for Tesla.
3,000 bots. That's it.
3,000 bots.
That's it.
Right. And look at the numbers. $1 billion in savings. Right. Actually, let's focus on that most right column, because that's probably a little bit more close to where Tesla actually is from its cost perspective. Okay. What does that mean? Well, okay, that factory, let's say, can produce 500,000 vehicles. So the cost savings per vehicle, if you want to look at it that way, is about $2,150.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Every car that comes off the line, they can produce it for that much cheaper. That's a 6% savings on an ASP of about 35,000. So if they wanted to, they could pass that on and reduce the cost of vehicles by 6% if they want to, be even more competitive in the marketplace and sell even more vehicles. Or they could book that as profit and keep that for themselves and improve profit margins. Or maybe it's a combination of both. Now, let's look at actually a more likely scenario for Tesla on the next page. Tesla has the current capacity in the factory, right, of 500,000 vehicles. That's the leftmost column there with numbers. Okay. And in that case, we've got 20,000 workers making $30 an hour, right? And the estimated factory labor cost is 1.7 billion. Okay. And if the factory is making 500,000 vehicles, the revenue at $35,000 a vehicle is 17.5 billion. They've got costs of 15.7, net income of 1.7 billion, a 10% margin, let's say. Again, these are rough numbers. Look what happens now if we desire to double the capacity of the factory, but we want to do it all with robots. Okay, we're not laying anybody off. We're not replacing anybody. We're just increasing production by a factor of 2. You would have needed to hire 20,000 employees, but in this case, now we're going to deploy 6,667 robots at an annual cost of about $233 million. Now your factory, if we drop down, has a capacity of 500,000 vehicles, the additional revenue of $17.5 billion. Total revenue now is $35 billion. Total cost just under $30 billion. And total net income is now $5 billion. We went from 1.75 billion now to 5 billion in net income, and your net margin now is 14%. The additional net income increase is $3.3 billion. This is how profound adding robotic labor could be to a company. Now, this is an extreme example. Can Tesla double production by adding, 6,000 robots? I don't know. Maybe in the long run they can. When I did a factory tour, when I was there with you, Herbert, at the annual shareholder meeting, I saw a lot of employees moving stuff around the factory. I saw a lot of employees doing what I think were pretty simple tasks to the cars. One point, there were 4 people under a car, screwing in some bolts and so on. These are all things eventually that can be automated by robots, either the industrial ones or humanoid, in my estimation. Again, I'm not an expert in this field, but I just wanted to show you the potential economic benefits to reducing the human labor costs. Now, there's 2 things this doesn't take into account. Actually, there's probably more, but 2 come to mind immediately. Is Tesla has turnover. The portion of those 20,000 people in the Giga Texas factory leave every year, right? There's hiring costs to replace them. That's not free. Okay, so there's even more cost on top of what you're seeing here. Robots don't turn over. They don't leave your factory and go work for another company. They stay there. Right. This is their career. They will stay at the Tesla Gigafactory until you're done with them. So that's a really, really important difference. And I'm sorry, I mentioned 2, and right now the second thing doesn't come to mind. It will in a second, I'm sure. But I think, the second thing is this. We're just looking at if you deploy robots in the Tesla factory. What about if you deploy robots then in your suppliers' factories? Yeah. So there's multiple layers to this, and the cost savings compound. And then, of course, other things like Tesla Semi and having autonomous trucks and everything, all these ways of automating everything just compounds on the cost and drives the cost down.
Yeah. I think the big idea, which is very good that you outlined here, is obviously if you're a company, you should look at cost savings, right? Replacing some workers, or like you say, not replacing the ones who leave. And I think the 50% of workers replace is a good thumb in the air as well, because I remember Tom Ju say that in Giga Mexico, he was thinking about 5,000 robots and 10,000 employees. So it was very for 10,000 employees, 5,000 robots, very, very similar to your number, because the replacement of the factory workers, not the others.
Yes.
So, and anyways, I like that. And then, but your the big idea here is that it's not just about cost savings. It's actually if I can have access to these bots, it allows me to create another one. If I can save 50% of one, I can build a second one. And then that's the actual competitive advantage, not just the margin change, Walmart versus Target, but actually Target now has the ability to create a second one, 2 for 1, right? Yeah. I think that makes sense.
And in a race for autonomous vehicles, for example, let's just assume, for example, that the technology behind FSD is equal to the technology inside of Waymo. Again, I don't think so, but let's just say that's the case. Then ultimately the success of both companies is in their ability to scale. Waymo doesn't make vehicles, they have to rely on their partners. So they're up against Tesla, who's looking to scale rapidly. Who is going to win in that case? Right? In my view, I think it's pretty clear. But Tesla has the added advantage then of deploying robotic labor into its factories and ramping up production that much faster. And of course, the unbox process and everything else that we've talked about before just leave Tesla with so many incredible advantages. And that's, again, assuming that Waymo and Tesla are on par from a tech perspective in terms of actually driving the cars. And I don't think that's the case.
I don't want to get derailed here, but I actually don't think that applies to the cybercabs. I think cybercabs is almost 100% automated. Maybe I'm absolutely wrong, but I think they've already removed a lot of human labor to do the cybercabs. But
In terms of the actual production, but remember, there's also workers around the periphery that are moving stuff around to get it
yeah,
into place for the robots to install. There's a lot of things going on in the factory that are away from the actual
yeah,
production line.
yeah. It's
Yep.
not zero. Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Let's go through the numbers here.
So now let's look at GM. I mean, similar sort of diagram here for GM. We've got revenue of about 50 billion a quarter and the cost of sales of about 42 billion. A huge percentage of that, or a large percentage of that, obviously is the materials that go into the vehicles, but another big part is the labor costs, right? And union labor is not known to be particularly cheap, but GM's gross margin of 14%, compare that to 18 for Tesla. All right. And you can see pretty quickly with the expenses that they get to, net profit of like 3%. So anything they can do to reduce these costs will make a huge difference on the bottom line. Absolutely huge. If not, help the company just survive, frankly, is the other issue that they actually have to face. And then for Ford, very similar picture. They've got gross profit margins of 14%, like GM. Again, compare that to 18 for Tesla. The cost of sales, the operating expenses are huge numbers, leaves them with a net profit of like 5%. So low margin businesses will disproportionately benefit from robotic labor because of the cost savings. These would be two companies that could potentially benefit enormously if they could adopt humanoid robots. Unfortunately for them, they don't have an Optimus program of their own. They're barely keeping up with Tesla on EVs, and we're not even keeping up. They're not really even in the game at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention the humanoid robot side. Now, I'm sure that Elon would sell Optimus robots to Ford and GM. He would happily do so. And to the extent that they could deploy them in their company, it might help them survive.
And the reason why they're happily to do so is because tell me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is humanoid robots, from Tesla's perspective as a vendor, will make them more money than potential loss of vehicle competition.
Yeah, I think so. And I think Elon also, would just do the right thing. I don't think he's going to withhold Optimus from his competition.
Yep.
But the problem is that there may be other people ahead of them in line. Other companies that have been working with Tesla over the years, such as Pepsi, for example, on the semi project, that they would naturally probably get a higher position in line. But and this also comes down to how important is it to these CEOs of these companies to ensure their place on that line, and what is it worth to them? How much are they willing to pay today, right? To actually, the way to think about it is to help Tesla develop Optimus. Just like you and I have been paying for FSD all these years and driving it and testing it and giving Tesla data, right? We've been helping them fund that project. This is more on the commercial side, right? These companies can help Tesla develop Optimus by giving Optimus access to all kinds of different ways of training and different data sets and so on. Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into Walmart. This is kind of an interesting one. Walmart is a colossus of a company. Quarterly revenue in the second quarter there of $177 billion, right? Walmart US, Walmart International, Sam's Club, membership revenue of a couple billion. Gross profit, 25%, actually not bad for a retailer, right?
Very good. Mm-hmm.
Pretty good. Operating expenses there of $37 billion and operating profit there of $7 billion. So huge numbers, and their operating profit margin is like 4%. Their net margin is 4%. It's a low margin business. They have to move a lot of revenue through this company in order to make any money.
I mean, this is interesting, eh? The huge gross profit, but tiny little operating net profit because of operating expense.
Yeah, the employees in the stores, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. This isn't so much a manufacturing business, so their labor cost shows up more on the operating expense side than it does in cost of sales.
Mm.
Right. Although it's in both places, but any company that's more retail is going to have the operating expense number to be larger. So 37 billion. So if you could shave off some of that cost, you can see how that could dramatically increase your operating profit. Let's say you shaved off 7 billion of that, you could double your profit, right? And so the question is that possible for Walmart? So let's take a look at the next page. So 3 scenarios using a wage rate here for Walmart of about $20 per hour. I think in the US they're like $18.25. So this is in the ballpark. 2.1 million employees worldwide. Colossal company. Okay, so estimated labor cost of like 122 billion a year, right? Okay. What happens if they just replaced 1% of their workforce with Optimus there in that left column? That's 21,000 employees to be, quote, replaced. Okay. And if you could replace them with a robot that replaced essentially 3.5 workers, right? It was working basically 7 days a week, three shifts a day. You need about 6,000 robots. Okay. So
Such a
6,000
small
robots.
number. It's such a small number.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. It's like 6,000 robots.
6,000.
1%.
That's 1%.
Yeah.
Again, assuming these robots can do the work of 3.5 people effectively.
Mm-hmm. Well,
They're
then,
not there
okay,
yet.
let's say it's just 1-to-1, still 18,000 robots, which again, I don't think 18,000 robots is that many robots to buy.
No. So that's annual labor savings of 833 million. Okay, they had $28 billion of pre-tax income over the last 12 months. So that's a 3% increase. By deploying just 6,000 robots, they've grown their earnings by 3%. That to me looks like pretty low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now move over to the right. We've got 5% and 10%. At 5%, your labor savings of 4 billion. At 10%, your labor savings are 8 billion. If you recall what I said on the previous slide, if they could double their operating profit from 7 billion and find 7 billion in savings, well, there it is right there. 10% of their workforce, you get 8 billion in savings. Okay, it's a 30% increase just on the savings there in terms of the pre-tax net income. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you're even calculating in here, right? You're not putting in worker turnover, the training. I have a friend who bought a Subway, the Subway sandwich shop, and he had to shut it down. And he said the reason is that he kept hiring people, teenagers, people that would train them, and then they'd leave and then train another one, leave. And it just was not, they could not figure that out, how to get that profitable. And that was the main reason.
Now, to your point, this is a huge issue for Walmart. And I've read that turnover at Walmart in the stores could be something like 70% per year.
Yep.
So let's say that's going to be about 1 million or so. Let's say it's only 1 million people a year. So 50% turnover of that 2.1 million people. So they got to hire 1 million people a year, Herbert.
Yep.
And let's say each person costs about $5,000 to hire. That's $5 billion in turnover costs.
And the training. Yeah.
Right. And probably plus the training. So the numbers are staggering in terms of what these companies are paying for human labor and the cost of turnover. It's absolutely enormous. So they don't actually have to replace or lay anybody off. These people are walking off the job every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You just start deploying robots without having to fire anybody.
And the reason they're leaving is because it's boring. These are boring, repetitive jobs that people don't want. They're the low-end things, stocking shelves or moving boxes, opening boxes all day long.
Yeah. And robots can do that 24/7, essentially.
All night long. Yeah.
All night long.
Night shifts. Yeah. No worries about that.
No worries about that. So staggering numbers. Again, just 10% of their workforce, 60,000 bots, results in almost a 30% increase in their pre-tax net income.
Again, these numbers are just blowing me away. It behooves me, if you are executive at Walmart, to not at least try to reserve 6,000 bots today. Like, just why not? 6,000 bots. Let's go. And, it's a little trial and let's see. It's worth it, because if it works, the upside is so high. And if it works, if you don't do the 6,000 now, your competitors could do it. And the downside for you is so high. It's like, you better just reserve 5,000 bots now, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting too, Herbert, when you say if it works, in my mind, Walmart actually has a role to play in if it works, because they can actually help Tesla train the bots, in the stores, in the warehouses. That's how they ensure if it works, by being an active participant in the training, just like you and I have been with FSD.
Yeah.
It works because of the millions of people that have been involved in training FSD. That's why it works, right? We got the data Tesla could crunch. Same thing's going to happen here with humanoid robots. Is Tesla is going to need all kinds of different data, right? And there's going to be all kinds of different methods that they'll use to collect the data, but one of them is going to be on the floor, in the stores, in the warehouses. So pretty staggering numbers for a company the size of Walmart. And this is just a simple chart that shows the bot workforce allocation from 0 to 60 or so percent, right? At 35% of the workforce, if you replace 35% of Walmart's workforce, you get a 100% increase, a doubling of their pre-tax net income. That's why I say that automating labor is so profound for businesses. This is a massive game changer. Okay, so I'm not suggesting Walmart's earnings go up by a factor of 2. Along the way, they're passing on cost savings to customers. This is how everybody benefits from this.
Yeah, this is what Elon means when he says that at some point in the far future, let's say that 50% of bots, workers are bots or even higher, costs of goods will fall. This is just the retail side of it. This is just the sell part. But if you do the transportation, you do the manufacturing, all of that, if you add 50% of bots or more, the cost of goods will fall 50% at the minimum. So my banana, which cost me $1, is now 50 cents a banana, and eventually it could actually be 10 cents a banana, like 90% reduction in price of products. My bicycle that I want to buy off the shelf could be $150, $200. It could be $25. You know,
compound that with the decline in transportation costs, logistics costs. Compound that with the decline ultimately of energy costs, and you get massive deflation going through the economy.
Yeah, so this is the 3 things, right? It's near zero labor costs because of humanoid robots, near zero energy costs because energy is going to be more and more used by the sun and batteries, and then near zero
transportation costs.
Transportation costs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because robotaxi, robotrucking. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those are, and of course, you've shown labor is usually for most companies the most important thing, like the biggest cost expense.
That's right. Yeah. And AI, whether it's
yeah.
embodied in a robot form, an Optimus form, or unembodied just in a computer, it will have a dramatic deflationary effect on labor costs. Yeah. But the good news, again, that's going to be offset by cost of living for people. So it won't cost as much to live. So here's a quick look at Target. I didn't run the numbers here in detail, but here's Target's revenue model. $25 billion in revenue per quarter. Net profit margin of 29%, so a little bit higher than Walmart. But cost of sales, they have about $17 billion, and operating expenses of about $6 billion a quarter, and net margins of like 5%, 4 or 5%. So a little bit of cost savings goes a long way here.
I'm just comparing it to Walmart. I always assumed that Target would have higher profit margins.
No, not in this period. I mean, there's some cyclicality to some of the stuff and some things that happen, but
interesting.
No, pretty low profit businesses.
Okay.
And then on the next page, I just put sort of Walmart, Target, and Kroger together on the same page just to compare them. Yep. Target has about 440,000 workers. Kroger has about 450. I just used an average wage rate of $20 an hour across the board. So, Walmart, as I mentioned, has about $122 billion of annual labor costs. Target might be $25 billion, and Kroger about the same. And then I just said, okay, what would it take in order to get a doubling of their pre-tax net income? Walmart needs 35% of their labor replaced by a bot. For Target, it's about 30, and for Kroger, it's about 20. And the reason that it's less for Kroger is that they're more labor intensive than Target and Walmart are, at least by this analysis. Again, this is a very rough analysis. But labor savings for Walmart of about 30 billion, for Target of about 5, and Kroger about 3.5. So, and you can see there for Walmart, it's 210,000 bots. For Target, it's about 38,000, and for Kroger, about 26,000 bots. Again, the key assumption there is that you can replace 3.5 workers with one bot. That's not going to be the case early on. So many of the savings and the gains that you see here will come over time as bots become cheaper and more capable. But for companies today that have a lot of turnover, you don't need a highly capable bot. You just need bots that can move things around. So Walmart, Target, Kroger, perfect. They have a lot of people moving stuff around from warehouses into stores, stocking shelves, restocking shelves. That's the kind of work that robots can essentially do today.
Yep. That's what I was going to say. I know you said that 3.5 to 1, like one robot can replace 3 employees, 3.5 employees. That's not today in the future. It's actually not that far in the future because the jobs we're talking about, as you just said, are pick and place. And they're not that hard. A lot easily can replace this many employees for this size company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even in people's homes, having a robot that can just pick and place would be tremendously helpful. I know in my household with 2 young kids,
Yeah.
stuff gets left everywhere. I'd love a robot that can just walk around and put it back in its place.
Sure. I can see you now walking down the stairs in a Lego. Sure. You're
Yeah.
the meme.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So another company that's worth looking at here is Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Amazon's a little bit different of an animal because they have AWS. So Amazon's quarterly revenue, they're at 180 billion, and AWS is 33 billion of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but look at the operating profit line, the 17.5 billion of operating profit, but AWS is 12.5.
Mm-hmm.
So AWS is the jewel in the crown of Amazon, so to speak. But the operating profit from the other businesses, basically the retail, right, but also includes advertising, which is pretty profitable, is 6 billion, right? So it's 6 billion on about 60 billion of revenue if we back out AWS. So it's about a 10% margin overall there. And you can see massive operating expenses. Now, Amazon has already deployed a lot of robots in their warehouses.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think about 1 million is the number that they've deployed. All kinds of different robots. Amazon actually has a website that shows the different robots that they've developed. So they've been able to get to, net margin of about 12%. Without AWS, that would be a lot lower. But Amazon is already automating as much as they can, and they will continue to do so. So this is a little bit harder one to really dig into because of the combined business here. But
Yeah, and I think it's worth making a mention that people always say, "Well, you don't need human or robots." Look what Amazon, they've already got 1 million robots. Yes, these are the ones that go in the pick up the pallets, just little the pick and place ones. The industrial robots. They got all sorts of different robots that move with wheels, without wheels, and as you and I have been saying for a year now, there is a role for every kind of robot. So if you're a business that doesn't have these industrial robots yet, you should get them for certain situations. If you don't have the wheeled ones, you need some for certain scenarios. And then you have a tremendous need for humanoid robots as well. They don't work as well for pick and place up and down the aisles. They don't work well at the cashier, typically. They don't work well for certain kinds of pallets, even pallets and so forth, boxes. But so you need every kind. And so what Amazon has done is, of course, maximize their use of these other kinds of bots, but they will also be using and adopting human robots. So just quick comment for people out there going, you see, you don't need them. No, you do.
well, and also they haven't solved the automation of the last mile yet either.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of people driving trucks around, hand delivering packages to your doorstep. Ultimately, I think that there'll be autonomous vehicles that do that, and there'll be humanoid robots that do the last few feet.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And a humanoid robot, doesn't have to worry about a dog biting it. Dogs still may bite it, but that's, it's not, you're not going to hurt a person. So lots of advantages there. And again, that may be a little ways off because a humanoid robot, in order to be able to do the last few feet, has to navigate all kinds of different structures of driveways and pathways and porches and gates and fences and all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But that will come in time. In the meantime, a company like the next one, UPS, I think is easier because a lot of what they do, again, it's that last few feet, the last mile problem, but also in the distribution centers and their sorting centers, revenue of 21 billion per quarter, right? Domestic package, international package, and supply chain solutions, operating expenses of like almost 20 billion. Now, look at the compensation and benefits. They actually break this down. Compensation and benefits, 12.1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
The amount that they're paying people is enormous. It's more than half of their revenue. Right? Again, you can quickly see if you can reduce the cost of that, how it would make a material difference to the economics of this business. Their net profit margin is only 6%. 1.3 billion. So if you could save 1.3 billion of that 12.1, you just doubled your profitability of your company, right? You would be a hero if you were a CEO of UPS to do that. So just amazing. There's a lot of companies like this that are low margin businesses that are very labor intensive. Okay. And I think if we look at the next page, Herbert, FedEx, very similar picture, as you can imagine.
Just obviously I'm thinking of Tesla. If you are UPS or FedEx, the reason why I think of Tesla is because Tesla uniquely has both human and robots and autonomous transportation.
Yeah.
which these companies, they absolutely need both human
Yeah,
or robots and autonomous transportation. So
they do.
you kind of like, why aren't you like calling? They might be. They likely have been. At least one of them has, right?
You would hope so. If they haven't, I would be
Or at least
shocked and disappointed. Yeah.
any other company out there. But other
If I was
humanoid
in the
robot
FedEx or
companies.
UPS boardroom and I was a board member, I would be, I'd be shocked if these companies weren't reaching out, because what a game changer this could be for their business.
Yep. But the salaries and benefits are huge, is what you pointed out, and that's why human or robot companies, these guys should be calling them now.
Yeah. And the interesting thing too is these two companies operate a fleet of aircraft, which are got to be pretty expensive,
Mm-hmm.
right? They've got a fuel cost there of almost $1 billion for FedEx. That's trucks and probably the planes. It's both. But if you electrify the trucks, then maybe you don't need to fly as much, because the trucks can travel, basically 24/7. I don't know how much of a difference that would make. Obviously, they'd have to fly some things across the country, because you can't drive a truck overnight from New York to Los Angeles. But maybe you can reduce some of that. Maybe everything doesn't have to go to Memphis to be sorted every day. Maybe you can regionalize more things if you've got humanoid robots. I'm not sure. I don't know the ins and outs of this business, but to me, it seems like there's some tremendous opportunities for cost savings with automation, whether it's transportation or whether it's the labor side. So here's just putting those three companies on one page. Again, in this case, what I did was, if a third of their workforce was replaced by bots, what would the annual labor savings be? In the case of Amazon, it's about 22 billion, UPS about 7 billion, and FedEx about the same, 7 billion. And what that would do to their pre-tax net income, in Amazon's case, about a 23% bump. In UPS case, it would double it, and FedEx more than double. Again, very significant. These are very rough numbers, but you can quickly see the significance of this. Coca-Cola, revenue of about 12 billion, far more profitable, because what Coca-Cola does is they don't actually bottle the drinks. They have other companies that do that. So they've taken off a lot of the expensive parts of their business off their balance sheet, right? So their gross margin is 61%. That's crazy, right? But they're what you're seeing here is not everything that's involved in making Coke and distributing it to customers. So Coca-Cola looks kind of abnormally profitable because of that. Net margin is 30%. Now, Pepsi, a little bit different story. Not quite as profitable. They've got food and beverage, right? About 50-50, and then some international stuff that get them to about 24 billion in revenue. So twice as much revenue as what Coke is reporting each quarter. But they also have a lot more expenses, so their net margin's only 11% versus Coke's 30%. In Pepsi's case, SG&A, selling general administrative, about 9 billion. A big chunk of that would be labor costs. So I think both of those companies would have some opportunities, particularly in Coke's bottling operations, where it's more labor intensive. In Pepsi's case, maybe more at the company level. There's some opportunities for cost savings there too. And then this is as a proxy for retail or food service. You could substitute Starbucks or any company you wanted to in here. Chipotle. So 3 billion of revenue in a quarter. Okay. That's in restaurant sales, food and beverage, and digital sales. Okay. 3 billion. And then operating expenses, labor expense there of about 800 million. On the far right there, second highest cost behind the cost of the food, the beverage, and the packaging is labor costs. Their net profit is 400 million. So labor costs were twice what their net profit is. So if they could cut labor costs in half, their net profit would double.
Yeah.
And of course, these companies have massive turnover problems. Look at Starbucks, look at any of these types of companies, same kind of issue. So they would be crying out for solutions here.
Yes.
No company that I've ever looked at has ever said that we love employee turnover. No one has ever said that. And the beautiful thing about Optimus is when you hire him, he's never going to leave you. Okay. So Herbert, just to finish this off on the final slide, we've been looking at sort of the economic impact, but it's also very important to remember this list, which we put together some time ago. The advantages of humanoid robots kind of beyond just the numbers. And this isn't even a complete list. But think about all the hassles that companies have to deal with humans.
Yeah.
Right? Robots are never late for work. They never get sick, right? They never quit. They don't need health care. They do repetitive work quite happily. They don't need retirement benefits. They don't have performance reviews. They don't fight with other employees. They don't go on strike. They don't steal stuff from you.
Yeah.
right? It's easier to scale up. You don't have to worry about training. Once the robot knows how to do it, they all know how to do it,
They all know how to do it.
right? It's a deflationary force on cost, not an inflationary one, et cetera, et cetera. That's just the left side. On the right side, there's some other cost savings, like you don't need as much parking spaces, you don't need as many bathrooms and food service and snack vending. You don't need middle management to manage the bots in the same way.
These
They
are
don't have
huge.
they don't have vacations.
Yeah.
They don't have children, right? There's
Yes.
no maternity, paternity leave. You can just talk to them, and by
Any
the way, they
language.
continuously get better, right?
This is a great list. Yeah. It's every single one of these eye-opening.
And maybe most importantly is the fourth from the top on the right: consistency, quality of work product. The bot is going to
Nice.
do everything with a level of quality that I think humans would find it hard to match. Now,
Yeah.
certainly there are human master craftsmen. It's going to take a while for bots to get to that level, but for the average worker in a factory, they're not operating at master craftsman level every time.
That's huge. That's a really good one, right? Because if a bot has been trained and you go, this bot knows this is it, I've trained it to be the best bot of all the other bots, all of a sudden that bot just transfers that knowledge to any bot.
Yeah.
They're all the same level of skill versus the others is, yeah, I'm always much better than you, for example, in any task, right?
That's right.
It's a
Yes.
joke. It's a joke. Stop. It's a joke.
But a silly example is like once a robot, knows how to carve something in a block of cheese,
Right. Yes.
right, that it might be difficult for a human to do.
Yeah.
Again, this is a silly example. It's not that important,
Yeah,
but
that's a
it
good
just
one.
goes to
It's a-
show
Mhm.
every bot would be able to do that once a single bot's figured that out.
That's a
So
big one.
economically speaking, it's huge, but then some of the other things too, there's economics attached to every single one of these items,
Geez, Cern, this list, it's so obvious when you go down the list, but it's so thorough that I feel like executives probably ignore this. They're not thinking this. They're just doing a simple hourly wage replacement. That's the only task they're doing, not all of this. This is great because I bet you, if you have an executive going down this list and they're going, they have experience with the no drugs, no need for drug testing. Like they know what percentage of the business of their employees are using drugs.
Yeah.
What does that do to all this? All that drug use will affect all of this. Late for work,
That's right.
all that, quality of work, compensation claims, and it's just it's like it's a real issue.
It's a real issue for a lot of businesses. Any executive that manages any number of people would look at this list and say, "Oh my gosh, yes."
Yeah, they're going to go, crap. Yeah. I guarantee you've experienced all of this. And then you have some sort of like sense of what percentage of this impacts your business. And it's significant enough that you have to create a policy for it. You need to create a training for it. You need to hire the right people so it doesn't happen again because it's so impactful to your business. Yep.
And the meeting time, the coordination between HR and legal and executive team and all these other things just compounds on some of these issues.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's more to add to this list. I don't proclaim this as a complete list, but this is a good start. So what we're looking at here, Herbert, is a profound change in labor. This is the first time in human history that we're developing a form of labor that will outcompete humans basically at every level, right? We've had industrial robots before, but they weren't robots that you could just talk to and command and have them do things. You have to program them. So there's limitations that made them quite expensive. For certain applications like making cars, it's a no-brainer, but not for everything else. You wouldn't put an industrial robot in a Chipotle restaurant, but you can put a humanoid robot there because they're the same size as the human workers. They fit in the world that we've already designed for ourselves. So the question now is, how long will it take to train these robots to get to the point where they are economically useful? That remains to be seen, but I think it's probably going to happen sooner rather than later, the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay. Well, if you're an executive, you better be, hopefully you're watching this show. Cern just laid it out for you. This is one of your more impactful, learnings from today. I just love this. I get it. Basically, you're saying it's just a rule of thumb, whatever dollar amount you're paying an employee, that's how much you could realize by replacing with a robot, because of all the other things like the benefits and others are probably equal to that dollar, if not more. So it's just a rule of thumb. Basically assume that you don't have to pay people. Your labor costs can be reduced.
Yeah, and this is
This
before
is
we factor in the costs of the advantages of humanoid robots slide. All
that's
those.
what I was saying.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah,
was saying. Yeah.
yeah.
And that slide is so cool. That slide is great. So if you are an executive, take a look at this one and take a look at the last slide, and then go and think about your own company. Does it behoove you to at least try to reserve 5,000 bots now? Or like you say, get started with a few just so that you can, and help train it so that when the time comes, you can be in line to get, when the time comes, go buy the more of them. And the other point you made a couple shows ago that I thought was worth repeating because it's so good. You said that not only if you're an executive of a company today, should you be calling these companies, Figure, Tesla, other bot companies out there, you should be paying them now money to get in line. Do you want to just explain that? Why you think that not only should they be like calling them saying, I want to buy your product. No. I'm going to pay you ahead of time now. Why would they do that?
The reason is because these bots aren't yet fully functional. There's some development work to do, right? And so you can sit and wait until development work is done, right? And hope that you get a chance to buy the robots. Or you can take a more active role and say, I want to be a partner in this development. I want to help Tesla get there faster. I want them to deploy it in my factory floors and my warehouses, and I'm going to help them do that. The alternative to those two is for, I'll pick a company, Walmart, to develop the humanoid robot themselves. Are they going to figure out how to manufacture 1,000,000 robots? Are they going to figure out how to do the AI part? No. So if Walmart's board looked at that and said, "Oh, it's going to cost us 25 billion to have our own humanoid program," then they should be willing to spend 5 billion with Tesla and be a partner with them. Again, just picking numbers out of the air, right? So that's the way to think about it is if this type of labor is going to exist in the world, how are they going to get it? And if they don't take an active role in getting it, then they're just going to be at the whim of the market and they may not have access to it at some point.
And not only access to the bot, but to be trained for specific tasks that you need, that is the highest priority for you, that reduces for you the most cost and most profit for you. So you would
Yeah.
say, okay, I want to reserve 5,000 for you. And then you would help train it for those tasks. So they go out first, right? Eventually it'll be
Yeah.
AGI and they'll be able to do any task, but that will be years away. But right off the bat, you're already getting advantage. Yeah.
And I would say too, I would say something even stronger. I would say that if you are, again, not picking on Walmart, insert any company in this example. If you're heading a company like that and you are not on the lookout for these new technologies and how it may impact your business, you don't deserve to survive, because we can see a technology that's going to change the world. And if you don't deploy it in your company, another company will. And if you don't have the foresight to recognize this opportunity, you don't deserve to be the leader of that company, and your company won't survive. It's going to
See?
come down to this.
Yeah, see, Cern, I was right. You should change this. Instead of saying a call option, it's basically just business survival. That's all it is. Optimus.
To
And
simplify,
it's not just Optimus. It's any humanoid robot is business survival. You got to get in there now.
that's right.
This is great. Beautiful Grok images, by the way. You're getting better at this. You always like to have your first slide with a Grok image.
Yeah, the one there on the right's not perfect. We've got the computers on the conveyor belts along with the packages.
I didn't even notice.
I'm not really sure that's going to work, but anyway, it was, yeah. Some of the images that created initially with the robots coming down the conveyor line, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen.
I just thought it was great because you have a mixture of industrial robots.
Yeah.
And then you have a mixture of the humanoid robots. And I thought that was a...
Well, there's heavier packages that need to be dealt with first, and then the lighter stuff comes down for the humanoids.
Yeah, see? Okay, so I thought that was smart.
Yeah.
I don't know why you need two of them, but okay, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the one has a handheld barcode scanner. It seems like it can just do that with its eyes, but
Right, true.
that's where
True.
Grok is still. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you still need to press. And also this whole idea of the whole point of this is that a humanoid robot can replace a existing process that a Walmart does. You don't need to change everything. If you already have the system where the human goes and scans everything, and that's how you get things, in your inventory tracked, then you just they can use fingers to press buttons on the screen, right? And eventually you'll go, okay, I don't need that because I've got humanoids. But, you it'll be mixture, right? It'll be a mixture for a while. So,
and maybe a company too, like Kroger or Walmart or Target. Sometimes you see the vendors in the stores restocking the shelves. Maybe Pepsi will send their humanoid robots into Kroger to restock their shelves.
That's actually more likely. I've talked to a number of folks on the supermarket business. They cannot make any changes.
Yeah.
There's a new cart that can it's a AI driven cart now, because the infrastructure cost is so high, their margins so low, they cannot afford to do this.
Yeah.
But Pepsi can, and suppliers can, and that's how they run their business, getting suppliers to introduce new technologies.
The Pepsi robots may be walking out the store with a few cans of Coke just to take them off the shelves. We'll have to see how they're programmed.
With cans of Coke, put it in the back. Yeah.
Yeah. They all mysteriously get crushed for some reason. No one knows why.
Well, if they are tied to metrics at the end, right, which is how do I increase sales of Pepsi? And then eventually it learns, if I had the Coke, and I'll just do it without thinking twice.
And that's why Pepsi wants to be involved in the training of these systems, not just the buyer. Yeah.
Okay, we're taking a little too far. That's a little crazy. But great work, Cern, as always. This one is a big one. We do need to revisit this every once in a while. I think every 1 year, 2 years, because it just everything's changing so quickly, and we'll see. But this is the message we want to tell employers. You've been on it for so long. If you're an employer, you better start looking at humanoid robots and book it and start training it, because it's significant to your business, either survival or even growth. You can do either.
Yes.
Thank you, Cern. Follow Cern, as you can imagine why you should be following him on his X account at, you didn't type it in today, at Cern Basher. And then, subscribe to him there. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
Herbert.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.